Thank you for joining me for our talk today about brain donation and supportive research for multiple system atrophy and how brain donation can help families, both families now and families in the future, dealing with multiple system atrophy. I'm Robin Riddle, CEO of Brain Support Network. BSN began in 2004. We started as a leader for a local MSA support group. We included MSA and 3 atypical Parkinsonism disorders that are all lookalikes for MSA. And when I say local, that means here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So back in 2004, and I note that that was almost 20 years ago, I realized that making brain donation arrangements for my father, who had progressive supranuclear palsy, one of those look-alike conditions, was really hard. Hard because hard to do it in the midst of actively caregiving. And I had so wished at that time that I could have somebody helping me, holding my hand along the way with these brain donation arrangements. And so that's really why I started BSN, was to help people. First of all, we began helping people here in our local Bay Area and in our local support group. And then over time, we started helping people nationally. We help families dealing with all kinds of neurological disorders, including multiple system atrophy and those look-alike conditions like Lewy body dementia, Parkinson's disease, progressive supranuclear palsy. We also sometimes help families or help those who are supposedly neurologically normal. I don't know if any of us is really neurologically normal, but we have been helping some of those people accomplish brain donation as well. And we're very proud at Brain Support Network because recently in March of 2021, we accomplished our 1,000th brain donation. I have some personal connections, both with brain donation number 100, that was my father, whose PSP was confirmed through brain donation, and my father-in-law, who was number 1,000. And in his case, Parkinson's disease was confirmed through brain donation. We have by now exceeded, it's now September 2021, we've blown past that 1,000 number. And one of the country's largest brain banks is the Mayo Clinic, and we are responsible for 40% of the brains that the Mayo Clinic takes in each year. We handle on average 3 to 4 brain donations each week, so we're quite busy. And we would like to do this without our stress level getting high and without your stress level getting high. And the way to do that is to make arrangements in advance. And I hope that all of you, after listening to this talk, contact Brain Support Network right away. You can call us at 650-814-0848 or visit our website, brainsupportnetwork.org, and we'd be happy to be in contact with you and help you make those advanced brain donation arrangements. I'd like to remind you that just because you make brain donation arrangements for yourself or for a family member does not mean that yourself or a family member is going to die the next day. All it means is that you've put things in place and so that you can have peace of mind that the brain donation will occur according to your wishes and the plans. So I'd like to talk about the 2 reasons to donate a loved one's brain upon death. And there's one key reason, which is that first is that it's the only way for the family to have a confirmed diagnosis. Oh, excuse me. So a confirmed diagnosis is only possible through a postmortem examination of the brain. Unfortunately, right now with MSA, there are no biomarkers. So that means you can't have an MRI, you can't have a blood test, you can't have a sweat test. There's no test now that says for sure you have MSA. Right now, there's only post-mortem examination of the brain. And right now, one study shows, and I'll show it to you later, that 40% of the people that we diagnose now with MSA, in fact, do not have MSA upon brain donation. And so the only way to have a confirmed diagnosis, again, is through postmortem examination of the brain. And this diagnosis can bring closure to your family. If you have MSA, can bring closure to your family, can bring peace of mind. MSA is not an inherited disease, and so your family members can know that that if they're adult children or grandchildren, that they know that they're not going to inherit MSA because you've confirmed the diagnosis for them. The second reason to donate a loved one's brain is so that the research can be enabled, research into MSAs, causes, treatments, and hopefully a cure. The diagnostic criteria is only as good as the number of brain donations that we've had. And so if we are ever going to develop better diagnostic criteria, I mentioned that 40% of the people that we think have MSA do not in fact have MSA. If that number is ever going to get smaller, if we're ever going to improve the diagnostic accuracy, we need to increase and continue with brain donations for MSA families. And that diagnostic criteria, for example, is not pulled out of thin air. It's based upon brain donations. And the brain bank and researchers take the brain, and then they take neurological records that provided by the person with MSA or their family, and they look at these two things and they decide, okay, did this person have MSA? Yes. If so, what do the clinical records show in terms of the symptoms? And that's the only way that the diagnostic criteria going forward can be improved. We thought earlier this year that revised diagnostic criteria was going to be published, and it hasn't happened yet. So maybe we're now in September 2021. Hopefully by the end of this year, we will see a diagnostic criteria revised. By the way, a Brain Support Network has helped over 200 MSA families alone with brain donation. So this 200 MSA brains at a brain bank is a very big number, and this really helps researchers develop that revised diagnostic criteria that we're waiting for. And remember how we said earlier that biomarkers are not available right now for MSA? Well, how can we develop a biomarker for MSA? Brain donation is really critical to the development of the biomarker. For example, right now there's a skin biopsy test that's being studied. If we could, while someone is alive, take a piece of their skin cells and biopsy that and test it to see if that person has MSA, that would go a long way to knowing if somebody has MSA and we can diagnose somebody accurately. However, the person that participates in that skin cell biopsy test, that person needs to donate their brain so that when they die and the brain is examined, we know for sure whether that person had MSA. This kind of this test of brain donation provides validity or accuracy to any kind of a biomarker like a skin biopsy test that we would come up with in the future. So brain donation is so important for research. And we need to make sure that we're enrolling the right people in studies. And the only way to know this is to have that diagnostic accuracy improved. So let's look a little bit about at two research studies that were both done or both published by the Mayo Clinic. And these two studies are very important to researchers, MSA researchers around the world, because they provide autopsy confirmed analysis of MSA brains. The first study that I'd like to mention is a study done out of the Mayo Clinic Brain Bank, and it was published back in 2015. And it's titled When Dementia with Lewy Bodies, Parkinson's Disease, and Progressive Supranuclear Palsy Masquerade as MSA. There were 134 brains included in this study. And these 134 people were all diagnosed while alive with MSA. And in fact, as I mentioned before, only 60% of them had MSA. 40% of them did not have MSA upon postmortem examination of their brain. The three most common misdiagnoses were dementia with Lewy bodies, Parkinson's disease, and much lower down was progressive supranuclear palsy. Brain Support Network, by the way, provided 25% of the brains used in this Mayo Clinic study. And we're very proud of that. And we think all of the people who donated their brains were very proud of that. If they knew that they were donating their brains, and many of them did, and assuredly all of the families who donated a loved one's brain, among those people, 134 people, can be very proud of what they've done for research. It's very interesting about this study, because you would think that a movement disorder specialist, this is a special kind of neurologist who's had additional years of training in movement disorders such as MSA and Parkinson's disease. You would think that a movement disorder specialist would have been better at diagnosing MSA than a general neurologist. In fact, this study showed it made no difference whether you saw a general neurologist or a movement disorder specialist. They all were only accurate 60% of the time, 60% of the time with an MSA diagnosis. That's a really incredible number that the diagnostic accuracy is so poor for MSA. Let's look at a second Mayo Clinic study, and it was recently published in July of 2021, and it looked at 171 brains of people who were confirmed on brain donation to have had MSA. So this is a little bit different study. And in fact, 23 of these people, 13%, did not have an MSA diagnosis while they were alive. They had a diagnosis of PSP, Parkinson's disease, or Lewy body dementia. So you can see again, our same three look-alike conditions. What was so important about this study was that it looked at the clinical records of these 171 patients, and it said, what clinical symptoms do these people have? And we learn a lot about MSA from studying, researching the brains of people with MSA, and that's again how the diagnostic criteria will be changed. And again, for this study, Brain Support Network and all the families that we served provided a very high percentage of cases for this particular study, and we're very proud of that. One of the things that the study showed is that it's very, very rare to have dementia as an early symptom and then later on to be diagnosed with MSA. Exceedingly rare. So if you see dementia in someone with MSA, if it's an early symptom, chances are not good that that person has MSA. Chances are very high that person has Lewy body dementia or Parkinson's disease dementia. And so, so understanding the clinical symptoms of these people is very important. Related to that is information about the diagnostic criteria. So these studies, like the one that was done in July of 2021, they help us revise or fix the diagnostic criteria for MSA. What that July 2021 paper out of the Mayo Clinic showed us is that just because someone is late onset, which is greater than the age of 75, doesn't mean that they can't have MSA. But in fact, the current diagnostic criteria says that if you're age 75 or older, you cannot have MSA. This study published in July of 2021 shows that that diagnostic criterion is wrong. And so again, we're waiting for that to be fixed. Another very important aspect to the diagnostic criteria that's wrong is that the diagnostic criteria currently says that if you have that you must have a 30 point drop in systolic blood pressure. That's the top number of the blood pressure. You must have a 30-point drop in a minute's time in order to be diagnosed with orthostatic hypotension. We've learned from that July 2021 study that that's flat out wrong, that 30-point drop criteria is far too stringent for people, and that number needs revision. So other important things that we learned from that July 2021 study were that there are some symptoms, clinical symptoms of people with MSA that are not included as part of the diagnostic criteria, which is an error. One very important one is REM sleep behavior disorder. A lot of people with MSA, a very high percentage, something like 85% of people with MSA have REM sleep behavior disorder. Another aspect or clinical feature of MSA that's not included in the diagnostic criteria is the importance of an atonic bladder or urinary retention. This is where the bladder doesn't move or doesn't squeeze at all. It's not that it squeezes too much, like with urinary incontinence, but that it's solid, it squeezes too little, it has no movement to it. And this is an important feature in some people with MSA and needs to be recognized. Also, the current diagnostic criteria doesn't say anything about erectile dysfunction. And in fact, the absence of erectile dysfunction may be an indicator that the person does not have MSA, and that needs to be mentioned in the diagnostic criteria. So we hope new criteria will be coming soon. So let's move on. Some other research that into MSA that can be made possible or has been made possible through brain donation is answering the question about, is cognitive impairment part of MSA or is dementia part of MSA? And I mentioned that cognitive impairment can be part of MSA, but if somebody has an early symptom of dementia, frank dementia, that's a strong indicator that the person does not have MSA. Also, the question of hallucinations and delusions. These are very, very rare in autopsy-confirmed MSA. And in most cases, if the person has hallucinations and delusions that are not caused by medication and they have MSA, they probably also have co-occurring Lewy body dementia. And we know through brain donation the expected disease course and prognosis, how long someone will live on average with MSA. And again, we can enroll the right people in research studies. So you can see that if we think that 100 people have MSA and we enroll them all in research studies, for example, a drug trial, but only 60 of them actually have MSA, we're enrolling the wrong people in research studies. And so we're not doing the researchers a good service by enrolling the wrong people. So we need to find the right people with MSA for our drug trials and other treatment trials. So Brain Support Network recommends the Mayo Clinic Brain Bank. It's one of the top brain banks in the United States. It actively publishes research on MSA using donated brain tissue. I showed you two studies, one from 2015 and one from July of 2021. There are several others, in fact. Those are just two. And then then the Mayo Clinic provides families with a written report within 100 days of a loved one's passing. And that's a very quick turnaround time for most brain banks, which is, again, one reason why the Brain Support Network recommends the Mayo Clinic Brain Bank. Families have to provide neurological records. We mentioned that earlier. And the family also has to provide a written report in order to receive that report from the brain bank. And the family report is usually a page and a half, and it says something like, my loved one started off with a symptom of orthostatic hypotension or REM sleep behavior disorder. This began 5 years ago when they were age 55. And over time, these additional symptoms came along, and we tried these kind of drugs, and now we're donated this family member's brain for brain donation and for research. So that's the family report that's required. And Brain Support Network helps families analyze and understand. We explain those reports to families, the neuropathology reports to families. After the brain bank sends it out to families, we're very happy to help families understand those reports. So those, again, are the three reasons we recommend the Mayo Clinic Brain Bank for MSA brain donation in particular. There are some challenges for brain donation with the Mayo Clinic. One challenge is that the recovery must be done within 24 hours of a loved one's passing. So you can see here the importance of planning in advance for brain donation if you only have a 24-hour interval in which to have a lot of important things happen. The second reason that it's a challenge is that families must bear the cost of the brain recovery. And that's typically $750 to $1,000 in the United States. I would like to note that Cure PSP offers grants to families of $750. So most families end up not paying anything, or they might pay a couple of $100s. And if that couple $100 is a challenge to a family, I assure you that we at Brain Support Network would be happy to provide an additional grant so that family is not burdened and can make brain donation arrangements. Advance arrangements are required because we have to coordinate with several parties: the funeral home or cremation organization, the pathology service, the hospice agency, and the care facility, if there is a care facility. So coordination is very important, and this must all be taken care of well in advance to succeed in a brain donation. So donating a brain requires the consent of a healthcare agent. In many states, this is the legal next of kin, the person who has filled out or who the patient has identified as their healthcare power of attorney or healthcare agent. Healthcare proxy is another word. If there is no one predetermined by the person with MSA, then it's a little bit of a scramble to try to figure out legally who can give consent. And again, this is another reason why it's good to make all these arrangements in advance so that that can be figured out. But in most cases, it's quite clear. It's either a spouse or the oldest adult child or the person who's the healthcare agent. The family must order all of the neurological records, and I've mentioned that a few times. The pathology service being used must be available daily. Not all pathology services are available daily. Many pathology services are run by MDs, pathologists, and Most pathologists we know don't like to work on the weekends and don't like to work on holidays, don't like to work in the evenings. So it's really important to find someone who's available 7 days a week. Doesn't need to be 24 hours a day, but it does need to be 7 days a week. And knowing who's doing what, when, for how much, and why is a very important part of the brain donation. In addition, a brain donation also requires cooperation among all parties: the funeral home, the hospice agency, and the care facility, if there is one. And a brain donation requires a cooperative funeral home or cremation organization. And what do we mean by cooperative? We mean two things. First is that the funeral home or cremation organization, sometimes called a mortuary, sometimes called a crematorium, they all need to provide access 7 days a week. Again, doesn't need to be 24 hours a day, but it does need to be 7 days a week. And ideally, a funeral home charges no fee to the family for accommodating the brain donation. I would say half the funeral homes in the United States will allow this on site and half will not. And of those half that do allow it on site, many do not charge any fee if the work happens during regular business hours, but might charge a small fee after hours. And we would consider a reasonable fee to be something like $100 or $200. We have at Brain Support Network a list of all of the cooperative funeral homes around the United States for major cities. And we've actually worked with the MSA Coalition to come up with a list of what those major cities are. These are cities where there might be large MSA support group, local support groups, or they're just a large metropolitan statistical areas in the United States. And so we have a list of funeral homes in each of those cities that are cooperative. So contact us if you'd like to have a suggestion. And Brain Support Network asks every family that we help to make either a pay it forward charitable contribution of $500 or more, or many families request memorial donations in lieu of flowers, which is wonderful for us. And some families actually do both. They make their own pay it forward contribution and they request memorial donations in lieu of flowers. For every $500 donated, we're able to help another family with brain donation. And it's one question we're often asked is, when should people start making brain donation arrangements? And we would say that everybody on this call should start making them now, today. You should contact us at Brain Support Network as soon as you watch this webinar, and contact us and we'll get going on making arrangements for you or for a family member. Otherwise, some good red flags for when to start the process would be if you or your family member is receiving hospice or palliative care. That would be a good time to make brain donation arrangements. If you or a family member has been hospitalized recently, that would be a good time to make brain donation arrangements. And certainly if a family member is actively dying, that would be a critical time to make brain donation arrangements. Even if we're contacted after end of life occurs, after death occurs, we still try our best. And probably in 50% of those cases, we're still able to accomplish brain donation. So please contact us as soon as you can. Now would be the best. And no matter what, contact us as soon as it occurs to you. And it's really important for MSA in particular to get going on arrangements now. And by now, I really do mean now, because many people with MSA pass away, often in their sleep, before they even enter hospice. And so it would be good to make arrangements in advance. And there's really no such thing as making them too far in advance. So I encourage you to check out the Brain Support Network website. On our website, we have a whole section on brain donation, and we have 8 case studies. Does that add up to 8? No, that's 7. 7 case studies on related in some way to MSA. 5 of the 7 people were diagnosed during life with MSA and had MSA upon brain donation. One of the 7 is a local support group member diagnosed with MSA during life, but in fact had Parkinson's disease confirmed through brain donation. And the 7th person was diagnosed during life with MSA and in fact had Lewy body dementia confirmed through brain donation. So check out some of those case studies. I'm sure you'll find them very interesting. So Brain Support Network is, we were founded in 2004. We're a nonprofit organization. We became registered as a nonprofit in 2012. We have 7 employees, most of them handling brain donation arrangements. Everyone works from home. We have dozens of volunteers here, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we're based in Menlo Park, California, which is in the Bay Area. And we've organized over 1,000 brain donations to date, and we'd be very happy to help your family as well. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about what you should all immediately do, which is to go to our website. You see it at the bottom of the screen, brainsupportnetwork.org. And we ask that you fill out the SOON, SOON form. And on this form, you're basically asked for a name, contact information, so we can get back in touch with you, what the diagnosis is, which will be MSA, and what funeral home you intend to work with. And then we'll contact that funeral home and find out if they're cooperative with brain donation and get back to you about that and get back to us to any other costs. Also on our website, we have an immediate need form, and that would be the form to fill out if your family member is expected to pass away soon, hours, a few days, couple of weeks away. That when we receive those forms, we take immediate action and follow up right away with families. There's also a third form called urgent, and you would be directed to this form if your family members already passed away, and we would do our best to help you urgently with brain donation arrangements. And as you can imagine, everyone's stress level is very high. Certainly when you're filling out that urgent need form, and often when you're filling out the immediate need form, stress level is very high. And if you want to avoid that, it's always best to make arrangements in advance. So again, please now, when this webinar is over, go to our website and fill out that SOON form, and we'll get back in touch with you. We'd be so honored to help your family with brain donation arrangements. So I'm going to pause now and let you clap. I'm sorry I can't hear you clap, but I'm sure you're out there clapping. And it's because this year we don't have a live question and answer session. I thought I would ask some of the frequently asked questions that often come up. And one is, what's the difference between brain donation and brain autopsy? So in both cases, the brain is analyzed after a person has died upon death, and only in brain donation is the brain saved in perpetuity and is the brain saved for research. With a with a brain autopsy, the brain is actually destroyed. The tissue is destroyed after it's analyzed, which seems really sad and a missed opportunity for me. We're often asked if joint, brain, body donation is possible. And yes, in many cases it's possible. It really depends on whether the body donation organization you intend to use will allow for a joint brain body donation. Some of them do and some of them don't. Again, if this is of interest, I encourage you to reach out to Brain Support Network and we can let you know. Another question we're often asked about is whether it's possible to donate a loved one's organs as well as brain. And this is this happens far fewer than any other scenario. And the reason is that organ donation, for example, skin or bones or the eye, these kinds of tissue donation must be conducted within a few hours of death. And so it's very hard to coordinate a brain donation with organ donation, but it is possible. And we just need to know in advance what your wishes are. Another question we're often asked is about COVID and brain donation. This question came up a lot in 2020. And unfortunately, we did do a lot of brain donations for people who had died of COVID. It was a very sad time. And most pathology specialists now are accepting doing brain donation work on people who are COVID positive. Not all of them, but most of them are. So we're still moving forward and always have been with brain donation, even if the person is COVID positive. Another question we're often asked is what happens if the person who's doing the donating of his or her brain is not able to give consent? One common reason that the person cannot give consent is that they're on their deathbed and consent cannot be given because the person's non-responsive or in a coma, for example. And no, brain donation does not require that the brain donor give consent. In fact, only the healthcare agent or the legal next of kin is allowed to give consent for brain donation. So it doesn't matter that the person themselves hasn't consented. That being said, I think there's a great value in having the brain donor themselves say, yes, I do want to give consent for this and be involved in the brain donation process. I know my father, I spoke with my father as to whether he would donate his brain, and he said that he would. And we are, our family is eternally grateful for him for doing that because it contributed to research. And it gives you some peace of mind to know that you're doing what your family member wanted you to do, that you're following their wishes. So that's always a good thing. We're often asked again if brain donation has to be planned in advance. And of course, advanced planning is always the best way. That way you can be assured that the brain donation will be successful. Most of us are in denial about our own death and that it's on the horizon, and we're often in denial that the deaths of our loved ones are on the horizon as well. And so we put off making changes and making plans. We put off selecting a funeral home. We put off putting our family member on hospice. We put off making brain donation arrangements. And again, I can guarantee you that just because you make brain donation arrangements today for yourself or for a family member does not mean you're going to die tomorrow. I can guarantee you that. So just because you make brain donation arrangements Doesn't mean you can't live a good quality of life many days, many weeks, many months, many years ahead, but make those brain donation arrangements in advance for everyone's peace of mind. And let's see. Oh, there are some misconceptions about brain donation. And one misconception that I just mentioned was that it's kind of a myth that as soon as you make those arrangements that your family member will die or you will die. That's of course totally wrong. Another very common misconception is that the funeral home or cremation organization can assist in making these arrangements, and that's not the case. Most funeral homes or cremation organizations really don't know how to go about making all of these arrangements, and we get many calls every week from funeral homes or cremation organizations for assistance with that. And another question we're often asked is, what suggestions do we have for caregivers or family members who are interested in making arrangements to donate their family member's brain upon death and don't really know how to bring this up? And I have a crazy idea for you, which is that you might mention that you saw a lady on a webinar today talking about brain donation, and she said several times, as soon as the webinar is over, contact Brain Support Network and make brain donation arrangements now. And that you heard her saying that, and you would like to know if your family member, if they thought, she thought it was a good idea. And if they say, yeah, let's look into it, then again, please now contact us at Brain Support Network, fill out that SOON, SOON form, and we'd be so happy to make brain donation arrangements in advance for you or any family member. Thank you so much for joining in the talk today about brain donation and how it can support MSA research, how it can help MSA families now and in the future. Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you now. Thank you. Bye-bye.